What unseen forces lurk when the world goes to sleep? At a forgotten truck stop in the heart of Iowa, the dead shift isn't just about punching a clock. It's about surviving the inexplicable. Are you brave enough to hear the chilling tales from the darkest hours? My name is Daniel Reed, and I've worked the dead shift at the Crossroad truck stop for 3 years now. 3 years of watching the clock tick from 2 in the morning until 6, when the sun finally crawls over the Iowa cornfields and releases me from whatever holds dominion over this place in the darkness. People ask me why I stay, why I don't find a normal job with normal hours. The truth is, after what I've experienced here, I'm not sure anywhere else would feel real anymore. The Crossroads sits at the junction of Highway 20 and County Road 47, about 40 miles from anything resembling civilization. During the day, it's just another forgotten pit stop where truckers grab coffee and use the restrooms. But when night falls, when the highway empties and the fluorescent lights become the only beacon for miles, something changes. The air grows heavier, the shadows stretch longer, and the rules of our waking world start to bend. I remember my first night clearly. My manager, a grizzled man named Vernon who had worked here for 15 years, handed me a laminated card as I clocked in at 1:45 a.m. The edges were worn smooth from countless hands, and the text was typed in an old-fashioned font that suggested it had been created decades ago. "Read this," Vernon said, his voice carrying none of the jovial warmth he'd shown during my daytime training shifts. "Memorize it. Follow it exactly." The card contained 7 rules, numbered and brief. Never acknowledge the woman in the red dress until she speaks first. If all the lights in aisle 3 go out simultaneously, leave the store for exactly 5 minutes. The payphone will ring at 3:33 a.m. Do not answer it. If a customer asks for directions to the old place, tell them it burned down in 1987, but keep the coffee fresh. Always keep the coffee fresh. Never look directly at the security monitors between 4 o'clock and 4:15 a.m. If you hear scratching from the walk-in cooler, it's just the compressor. I laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of hazing ritual for new employees. Vernon didn't smile. His weathered face remained grave, his pale blue eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my stomach clench. "You think I'm joking," he said quietly. "By sunrise, you won't." He left me alone after that, disappearing into his office and closing the door. I wouldn't see him again until my shift ended. That first night, I learned that the dead shift employee works in complete isolation. No backup, no support, just you and whatever comes through those doors. The first few hours passed uneventfully. A handful of truckers stopped for diesel and convenience store supplies. They were normal enough, though I noticed how quickly they completed their business, how their eyes would dart toward the darker corners of the store, how none of them lingered. By 3 in the morning, the last truck had pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the void of the Iowa night. The silence that followed was profound. Not peaceful, profound. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and makes you hyper-aware of every small sound. The hum of the refrigeration units, the tick of the ancient wall clock, the soft buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the payphone rang. The sound was jarring, impossibly loud in the stillness. I froze behind the counter, Vernon's rules flashing through my mind. The payphone was mounted on the wall near the restrooms, its grimy handset dangling from a metal cord. Nobody had used a payphone in years. I didn't even know it still worked. It rang again, and again. Each metallic jangle seemed to echo through the store, bouncing off the shelves and coming back distorted. My hand moved toward the phone of its own accord. I wanted to answer it, needed to answer it. Something about the ringing felt urgent, like someone on the other end desperately needed help. I was 3 steps from the counter when I remembered Rule 3. My feet stopped moving, though my body strained forward. The compulsion to answer was overwhelming, an itch I couldn't scratch, a question I couldn't ignore. The ringing continued for exactly 1 minute. and then stopped as abruptly as it had started. The silence that rushed back was somehow worse than before. It felt charged, expectant, like the air before a lightning strike. I stood there, breathing hard, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nothing happened. The store remained empty. The lights stayed on. Everything was normal, except it wasn't. I became aware of a presence in the store. Not something I could see or hear, but something I could feel. A awareness that I was no longer alone. I turned slowly, scanning the aisles. The security mirror in the corner showed me empty rows of chips and candy bars. But the feeling persisted, raising goosebumps along my arms. That's when I noticed the coffee. The industrial pot I brewed at 2:30 a.m. was nearly empty, the remaining liquid thick and dark like tar. But I hadn't served any customers in over an hour. I distinctly remembered it being 3/4 full before the phone rang. I checked the timestamp on the register receipt tape. Only 5 minutes had passed. Rule 5 echoed in my mind. Keep the coffee fresh. Always keep the coffee fresh. I brewed a new pot immediately, my hands shaking as I measured out the grounds. While the machine gurgled and hissed, I became aware of footsteps in aisle 3. Soft, deliberate footsteps, like someone walking barefoot on the linoleum. But when I looked up, the aisle was empty. The footsteps continued, moving from one end of the aisle to the other, then back again. Pacing, searching for something. Hello. I called out, my voice cracking. Store's open. Come on up to the counter if you need help. The footsteps stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. Then, slowly, one by one, the fluorescent lights in aisle 3 began to flicker. Not randomly, systematically, starting from the back of the store and moving forward. When the last light went out, plunging the entire aisle into shadow, I remembered Rule 2. If all the lights in aisle 3 go out simultaneously, leave the store for exactly 5 minutes. I grabbed the key ring from under the counter and walked toward the door, forcing myself to move calmly despite every instinct screaming at me to run. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, and I stepped out into the parking lot. The night air was cold against my skin, carrying the smell of diesel fuel and distant rain. I checked my watch. 3:47 a.m. The parking lot was empty except for my old Honda parked near the dumpster. The highway stretched in both directions, a ribbon of black asphalt disappearing into darkness. Not a single vehicle in sight. I counted out 5 minutes exactly, watching the second hand crawl around my watch face. Behind me, through the store's large windows, I could see the lights in aisle 3 remain dark. But something was moving in that darkness, something that cast no shadow, that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Don't look too closely, I told myself. Don't try to understand it. When exactly 5 minutes had elapsed, I walked back inside. The lights in aisle 3 flickered once, twice, then came back on at full brightness. The aisle was empty, but every single item on the shelves had been turned around, their labels facing backward. I spent the next hour methodically turning each item around, my hands working on autopilot while my mind tried to process what I'd witnessed. By 5 a.m., exhaustion had settled into my bones. I still had an hour left on my shift. That's when I heard the scratching from the walk-in cooler. The scratching from the walk-in cooler started soft, almost tentative, like fingernails dragging slowly across metal. I stood behind the counter, frozen, Vernon's 7th rule playing on repeat in my mind. If you hear scratching from the walk-in cooler, it's just the compressor. Just a compressor. Right. The sound grew louder, more insistent. Long, deliberate scrapes followed by silence. Then more scraping. It had a rhythm to it, almost like a pattern. 3 long scratches, 2 short ones, then silence. Over and over. I forced myself to check the inventory clipboard, pretending to count stock while my hands trembled. The scratching continued for 20 minutes before finally stopping at 5:23 a.m. When Vernon emerged from his office at 6, right as dawn broke over the cornfields, he looked at me with something between pity and understanding. My face must have told him everything. You followed the rules, he said. It wasn't a question. I followed the rules, I confirmed. He nodded slowly. Then you'll be back tomorrow night. I should have quit right then. Should have walked out and never looked back. But Vernon was right. Something about surviving that first shift had changed me. The normal world felt thin now, like tissue paper stretched too tight. The Crossroads truck stop, with all its impossibilities, felt more real than anything I'd experienced before. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I've worked the dead shift 5 nights a week, and I've learned that the 7 rules are just the beginning. The Crossroads has its own ecosystem of strangeness, patterns that emerge if you pay attention. Some things happen every night without fail. Others are rare enough that you start to doubt your own memories when they occur. The coffee situation, for instance, isn't just about keeping it fresh. After 6 months, I realized that the coffee level drops whenever something is about to happen. It's a warning system. If I check the pot and find it half empty when it should be full, I know to prepare myself. The more coffee that's disappeared, the worse the night will be. Then there are the regular occurrences. Things I've learned to expect, almost routine in their impossibility. Every Tuesday and Thursday, at exactly 2:47 a.m., the bathroom door in the men's room slams shut. Always the middle stall. I've checked it dozens of times. The door isn't warped. The hinges are fine. There's no draft. It just slams. After the first month, I stopped investigating. Now I just mark it in my mental log and continue restocking shelves. On Friday nights, someone plays the old arcade machine in the corner. Pac-Man, manufactured in 1981, disconnected from power since 2003. I can hear the distinctive 8-bit sounds, the waka 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 of Pac-Man eating dots. The screen never lights up, but the sounds are clear as day. Once, I walked over while it was playing and placed my hand on the machine. It was cold as ice, and the sound stopped immediately. I haven't touched it since. The most unsettling regular occurrence involves the security monitors. Rule 6 says never look at them between 4 o'clock and 4:15 a.m., and I've followed that rule religiously. But I've learned to watch the clock starting at 3:55 a.m., because those 15 minutes change the store somehow. When I emerge from the back office where I hide during that time, something is always different. Sometimes it's small things. The magazines rearranged by date instead of title. The candy bars sorted by color. Once, every item with red packaging had vanished completely. Not stolen, just gone. Only to reappear the following night stacked in a perfect pyramid in the middle of aisle 2. But sometimes the changes are bigger. 3 months into my employment, I came out after the 4 to 4:15 blackout period to find muddy footprints leading from the front door to aisle 3, then stopping abruptly in the middle of the aisle. Not turning around, not leading anywhere else, just stopping. The mud was still wet, and when I worked up the courage to kneel down and examine it, I found it wasn't mud at all. It was clay, thick, gray clay that stank of stagnant water and rot. The kind of clay you might find at the bottom of a lake. I mopped it up quickly, trying not to think about what might have made those prints. The shoes were large, maybe size 13, but the stride length was wrong. Too long. Whatever made those prints had been taking steps twice as long as any human could manage. Other employees have their own experiences. I'm not the only one who works the dead shift. There are 4 of us who rotate, each taking different nights. We don't talk about it much during shift changes, but sometimes, in the gray light of dawn, exhaustion loosens our tongues. There's Rita, who's worked here longer than anyone except Vernon. She's a tough woman in her 50s, the kind who raised 3 kids alone and doesn't scare easily. But even Rita goes pale when she talks about the woman in the red dress. She comes in maybe once a month. Rita told me one morning as we share coffee during the shift change. Always between 2:30 and 3 a.m. She walks in wearing this vintage red dress, like something from the 1950s. Hair done up perfect, makeup perfect, and she just stands there, right inside the door, staring at the shelves. What does she want? I asked. Rita shook her head. That's the thing. She never says. Rule 1 says don't acknowledge her until she speaks first. I've waited whole shifts where she just stands there for hours, never moving, never blinking. Then right before dawn, she turns around and walks out. But twice, she's spoken to me. What did she say? Rita's hand trembled as she raised her coffee cup. First time, she asked me if I knew where her children were. Just like that, calm as anything. Excuse me, miss, do you know where my children are? I didn't know what to say, so I just said no. She smiled at me. God, that smile. And said, that's all right. I'll find them eventually. Then she left. And the second time was worse. She asked me if I was happy with my life. Started listing things about me. My kids' names, my ex-husband, the fact that I have a scar on my left shoulder from a car accident when I was 17. Things she couldn't possibly know. Then she said, you should be more careful. The roads are dangerous at night. The next evening, on my drive home, a semi-truck ran a red light. Missed my car by inches. I've never seen the woman in the red dressed myself, and I'm grateful for that. But I've heard her. Twice I've been alone in the store and heard the soft click of high heels on linoleum moving through the aisles. When I look, there's never anyone there. But I can track her progress by sound alone, and I've learned to stay behind the counter until the clicking stops. Then there's Marcus, a college kid who took the job to pay tuition. He only lasted 4 months before quitting, but he told me something during his last shift that I think about often. I figured it out, he said, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. The pattern. It's not random. What do you mean? The weird stuff always happens in cycles. Every 28 days, things get worse. Way worse. More activity, stronger phenomena. I've been tracking it. He pulled out a notebook covered in frantic handwriting. See, the really bad nights line up with the lunar cycle. New moon, everything goes crazy. I looked at his data. He was right. The worst nights I'd experienced all fell within 3 days of a new moon. The night when every light in the store went out simultaneously. The night when I heard voices whispering in a language that hurt to listen to. The night when something with too many teeth smiled at me from the darkness outside the windows. What do you think it means? I asked. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. I think this place is thin, like the barrier between whatever's on the other side and us is wearing through. And during the new moon, when everything's darkest, things can push through easier. He quit that night. I heard he transferred to a different college, somewhere far from Iowa. I don't blame him, but I stayed, and I verified his theory. The new moon nights are always the worst. That's when the rules aren't enough. When the strangeness bleeds into every corner of the store and I spend my entire shift just trying to survive until dawn. The other employees have developed their own coping mechanisms. Rita keeps her rosary in her pocket and prays silently when things get bad. James, our Thursday night regular, listens to old country music on earbuds, trying to drown out the sounds that aren't supposed to exist. And me? I write everything down. Every strange occurrence, every pattern, every rule I've discovered through trial and error. Because Vernon's 7 rules aren't the only ones. I've learned others through experience. Never count the cars in the parking lot. The number will always be wrong. If a customer's shadow moves independently, serve them quickly and don't make eye contact. The ice machine in the corner dispenses ice that's colder than it should be. Sometimes, impossibly, it has frost patterns that look like screaming faces. If you hear a child laughing, check the timestamp. If it's between 2 o'clock and 6 a.m., you're not hearing a child. The bathroom mirrors sometimes show reflections of the store that don't match reality. If you see someone in the reflection who isn't there when you turn around, don't investigate. Most importantly, never, ever ask Vernon what happened to the previous night's shift employees before Rita. He won't answer, but his silence tells you everything you need to know. Despite all this, despite the fear that sits like ice in my stomach every time I clock in, there's something almost comforting about the routine now. I know what to expect. I know how to survive. The Crossroads truck stop with all its impossibilities, has become my normal. But sometimes, on the worst nights, I remember something Vernon said during my second week. The rules keep you safe, he told me, but they don't keep you separate. Every night you work here, you become a little more a part of this place. Eventually, you might not be able to leave at all. I didn't understand what he meant then. Now, as I drive home in the morning light and feel the normal world settling around me like an ill-fitting coat, I'm starting to. The truckers are the real witnesses to what happens at the crossroads. They're the ones who see this place from the outside, who can compare it to the hundreds of other truck stops dotting America's highways. And they know something is wrong here. I've learned to read truckers over the years. You can tell within seconds of them walking through the door what kind of experience they're about to have. The veterans, the ones who've been driving for decades, they enter carefully, eyes scanning, bodies tense, like soldiers entering hostile territory. They know about places like the crossroads. They've heard the stories over CB radio, shared in hushed conversations at rest stops across the Midwest. The rookies are different. They enter with the casual confidence of people who still believe the world makes sense. Those are the ones I worry about. It was a rookie who first told me about the hitchhiker. His name was Tommy, fresh-faced kid from Pennsylvania hauling his third long-distance load. He came in around 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, ordered coffee, and I could immediately tell something had shaken him. His hands trembled as he counted out change, and his eyes kept darting toward the windows, checking the darkness outside. "You okay?" I asked, pouring his coffee. He laughed nervously. "Yeah, something weird happened about 10 miles back. I learned not to push, but I'd also learned that people needed to tell these stories. Needed someone to confirm they weren't losing their minds. So I waited, and eventually, Tommy continued. I saw someone on the side of the road," he said. "Young woman, maybe 25, wearing a white sundress. Just standing there in the middle of nowhere at 3 in the morning. I thought maybe her car broke down, so I slowed down to see if she needed help." "Did you stop?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "No." As I got closer, I saw her face in my headlights, and he paused, struggling with the words. She was smiling. This huge smile, way too big, and her eyes were wrong. Completely black, like holes in her head. And she started running toward the truck. Not jogging, sprinting impossibly fast. I hit the gas, and she kept pace with me for maybe half a mile, running alongside my cab at 60 miles per hour, still smiling. What happened then? She just stopped. 1 second she was there, the next she was gone, like she'd never existed. He looked at me, desperate for validation. I'm not crazy, right? That happened. I poured myself a cup of coffee, considering my response. About 10 miles back, you said. Were you near County Road 47? His eyes widened. Yeah, right at that intersection. You're not the first to see her, I told him. Some call her the runner. She's been spotted on that stretch of road for at least 20 years, probably longer. Best I can tell, she only appears to people who are heading to this truck stop. What? I shrugged. Maybe she's trying to warn people. Maybe she's just another piece of whatever's wrong with this place. Either way, you did the right thing not stopping. Tommy left half an hour later, visibly relieved that he wasn't insane. But I could see the change in his eyes. He'd seen something that didn't fit into his understanding of reality, and that crack would never fully heal. I wondered if he'd keep driving this route or find excuses to avoid it. The runner is just one of many recurring phenomena on the roads around the crossroads. There's also the follower, a pair of headlights that appears in truckers' mirrors around 4 a.m. and follows them for miles, matching their speed exactly, never getting closer or farther away. When they arrive at the crossroads and check behind them, there's never another vehicle in sight. Then there's the radio problem. CB radios are a trucker's lifeline, a constant stream of chatter and information from other drivers. But on the roads approaching the crossroads during the dead shift, something interferes with the signal. Drivers report their radios filling with static, and within that static, voices. Not random voices. Voices that know their names, that whisper secrets, that issue warnings. A driver named Big Rick told me about this over coffee one night. He'd been driving for 30 years and claimed nothing scared him anymore. But his hands shook as he described what happened on his approach to the crossroads the previous week. My CB started acting up around 3:45, he said. Just static at first, but then I heard my name. Richard. Not Rick, but Richard, which only my mother calls me. The voice said, Richard, you need to turn around. Don't go to the crossroads tonight. I thought it was someone messing with me, so I ignored it. But the voice got more insistent. Started describing my truck, my cargo, the exact time I'd left my last stop. Then it said, your daughter Jennifer is home alone. She shouldn't be alone. Turn around. Richard, was it true? I asked, was she alone? My daughter's 23, lives in her own apartment. She's always alone at night. But the voice knew her name, and that got to me. I almost turned around, but I've been driving too long to let fear win, so I kept going. When I pulled into this parking lot, my CB went dead, completely fried. I had to buy a new one the next day. Did you call your daughter? Big Rick nodded. First thing I did. She was fine. Said she had a weird dream about me, though. Said she dreamed I was standing outside her apartment, knocking on the door, but when she looked through the peephole, my face was wrong, distorted, like she was looking at me through water. I've heard dozens of variations of this story. The voices on the CB always know personal information, always try to convince drivers to turn back. Some drivers listen. Most don't, because missing a delivery means losing money, and truckers can't afford to let superstition interfere with business. But the ones who refuse to listen sometimes experience something worse than voices. Last year, a driver named Elizabeth came in around 4:30 a.m., nearly in tears. She'd ignored the warnings on her CB and continued to the crossroads. About 2 miles from the truck stop, her engine had died without warning, just cut out completely, leaving her stranded in the darkness. I tried everything, she told me, her voice breaking. The engine wouldn't turn over. So I grabbed my flashlight and got out to check under the hood. That's when I noticed the smell. What kind of smell? Rot. Like something dead, but worse. Concentrated. And I heard breathing. Heavy breathing coming from underneath my trailer. I pointed my flashlight under there, and she stopped, her face going pale at the memory. What did you see? Hands. Dozens of human hands. Pressed against the underside of my trailer, like they were trying to hold on. Pale hands, dirty, with broken fingernails. They were moving, sliding around, searching for grip, and the breathing was coming from them. These wet, rattling breaths. What did you do? I ran. Just ran straight toward the lights of this place. Behind me, I heard my truck start up on its own. The engine just roared to life. When I looked back, the trailer was moving, rolling forward slowly, those hands still clinging to the underside. It followed me for a while, then veered off the road and stopped. By the time I worked up the courage to go back, everything was normal. The hands were gone. The truck started fine, but there were handprints all over the underside of the trailer. Dirty handprints that I had to scrub off before I could continue my route. These stories have a cumulative effect. I've started to piece together a geography of wrongness around the crossroads. Certain stretches of road are worse than others. Certain times are more dangerous. And there are patterns that suggest intelligence behind the phenomena, something that learns, that adapts, that actively interferes with people trying to reach or leave this place. The local lore doesn't help. I've done research during my off hours, digging through newspaper archives and local history books. The land where the crossroads stands has a troubled past. In the 1870s, this was a stagecoach stop. According to records, 7 travelers disappeared over a 6-month period in 1877. They checked into the way station and were never seen again. The building burned down under mysterious circumstances in 1878, and no one rebuilt on the site for 20 years. In 1923, it became a speakeasy during Prohibition. Local law enforcement raided it in 1929 and found the basement full of bodies, 12 people who'd been reported missing over the previous 2 years. The owner claimed he didn't know how they'd gotten there, but the basement had been locked. He died in prison 3 months later, allegedly of natural causes, though the coroner's report noted strange bruising around his throat in the pattern of small handprints. The current truck stop was built in 1968. The original owner sold it after only 6 months, claiming the place was spiritually contaminated. It changed hands 7 times in the following decade before Vernon's father bought it in 1979. Vernon inherited it in 2003 and has run it ever since, seemingly unbothered by its history. Or perhaps not unbothered, but resigned. Vernon knows more than he tells us. Sometimes I catch him standing in the parking lot during my shift, staring at the highway with an expression of deep weariness. Once, I asked him why he stays, why he doesn't just sell the place. Can't sell it, he said simply. Tried twice. Both times, the buyers backed out at the last minute. Said they had bad dreams about it, that something told them to stay away. After the second time, I realized this place doesn't want to be abandoned. It needs people here, needs us to witness what happens, to be part of whatever cycle it's caught in. But why you? I asked. Why your family? Vernon looked at me with those pale blue eyes, and for a moment, I saw genuine fear in them. My father made a deal, he said quietly. Back in '79, business was failing. The strange happenings were driving customers away. He was about to lose everything. So he went into the store one night during the dead shift, and he asked whatever was here, to let the business survive. And it did. Within a week, truckers started coming back. Within a month, we were profitable again. But deals like that always have a price. What was the price? Someone from our family has to always be here, managing it, overseeing it, making sure the rules are followed. If we leave, if we abandon our post. He trailed off, but I understood. Whatever his father had bargained with wouldn't let them go. The psychological toll of working the dead shift is something I don't think normal people can understand. It's not just the fear, though that's certainly part of it. It's the way reality starts to feel negotiable. After enough nights of watching impossible things happen, your sense of what's real and what's not begins to erode. I've started having experiences that blur the line between the crossroads and the outside world. Last week, I was grocery shopping on my day off when I heard the distinctive sound of the Pac-Man machine from the truck stop. I was in the cereal aisle of a supermarket 30 miles away, but the sound was clear as day. When I turned around, I caught a glimpse of the truck stop's fluorescent lights reflected in the store's floor tiles. There and gone in an instant. Rita has it worse. She told me she sometimes sees the woman in the red dress in her regular life now. In shopping malls, standing in parking lots, always in the distance, always watching. The woman never approaches, never speaks, but her presence is a constant reminder that the strangeness of the crossroads doesn't always stay contained within its walls. We cope the best we can. We share our stories, validate each other's experiences, and develop new rules as we learn them. We've created a community of witnesses, people who understand what it's like to live on the boundary between the normal world and whatever exists on the other side. But some questions remain unanswered. What is the crossroads, really? Is it a place where something supernatural resides? Or is it a thin spot in reality where things from elsewhere can push through? Are the phenomena we experience ghosts, demons, or something else entirely? And most troubling of all, are we just witnesses, or are we slowly becoming part of whatever haunts this place? The night I decided to break the rules was 3 months ago, during a new moon. I'd worked at the crossroads long enough to know better, but curiosity and exhaustion had eroded my better judgment. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand what was happening in this place instead of just surviving it. The shift had started normally enough. I clocked in at 1:45 a.m., checked the laminated rule card even though I'd long since memorized it, and began my routine. But tonight felt different. The air was heavier, charged with expectation, like the atmosphere before a severe thunderstorm. By 2:30 a.m., the coffee pot was already half empty, despite no customers. That was my first warning. A bad night was coming. I brewed fresh coffee and steeled myself for whatever would happen. At 3:33 a.m., the payphone rang. I'd followed Rule 3 faithfully for 3 years, never once answering. But tonight, as the ringing filled the store, I found myself walking toward it. Each ring felt like a question, an invitation, a demand for acknowledgement. My hand closed around the grimy handset, and I lifted it to my ear. "Hello," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Static filled the line, deep and crackling, like the sound of ice breaking on a frozen lake. Then, through the static, I heard breathing. Slow, deliberate breaths that seemed to come from something with lungs far larger than human. "Daniel," a voice said. It sounded like multiple voices speaking in unison, slightly out of sync with each other, creating a disorienting echo effect. "You've been here 3 years. You follow the rules. You've survived. But you don't understand." "Understand what?" I asked. "What you're protecting. What you're containing. Every night you work here. Every rule you follow. You're maintaining a barrier. The coffee must stay fresh because freshness means life, means time moving forward, means reality holding firm. The lights in aisle 3 going out means something is trying to push through, and leaving gives it nowhere to anchor. The woman in red is a guardian, not a threat, but she must initiate contact to maintain the boundary between her purpose and yours." The voice paused, and I heard what sounded like screaming in the background, distant and hollow. "What are you?" I managed to ask. "We are what was here before. Before the truck stop, before the speakeasy, before the stagecoach station. This land is a crossroads in more ways than one. A place where the boundaries are thin, where passage is possible. The rules don't protect you from us. They protect us from escaping." The line went dead, leaving me standing there with the handset pressed to my ear, my mind reeling. I'd broken Rule 3, and instead of something terrible happening to me, I'd been given information. But was it truth or manipulation? I hung up the phone and returned to the counter. My watch showed 3:39 a.m. 6 minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. The store around me looked the same, but something had changed. The shadows in the corners seemed darker, more substantial. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a different frequency, almost like they were vibrating in response to something. That's when I noticed the security monitors. It was 3:47 a.m., 13 minutes before I was supposed to avoid looking at them. But they had changed. Instead of showing the usual feeds of the parking lot and store aisles, every screen displayed the same image. The walk-in cooler door, closed and ordinary looking. As I watched, the door in the monitors slowly opened. I should have looked away, should have closed my eyes or left the counter. But I couldn't move. Whatever was on the other side of that cooler door was finally going to show itself. And after 3 years of following rules designed to keep me ignorant, I wanted to see. The door opened wider, revealing darkness beyond. Not the interior of the cooler with its shelves of soda and beer, but an absolute darkness that seemed to have depth and texture. And within that darkness, something moved. It started as shapes, abstract forms that could have been shadows or could have been something solid. They writhed and shifted, pressing against the boundaries of the doorway like they were testing its strength. Then, slowly, they began to take form. Hands emerged first, dozens of them, hundreds, pale and grasping, reaching out from the darkness. They were followed by faces, human faces stretched and distorted, mouths open in silent screams, eyes empty and black. The faces pressed against the edge of the doorway, crowding together, desperate to push through. Behind them, I saw more. Figures in red dresses, standing still and watchful. Things with too many limbs crawling over each other. A woman in white running in place, her legs moving, but her position never changing. And deeper in the darkness, something huge and ancient that I couldn't fully perceive, something that existed in more dimensions than my eyes could process. This was what lived on the other side. This was what the rules held back. The clock on the wall clicked to 4 a.m. I'd been so transfixed by the monitors that I'd forgotten about Rule 6. The screens flickered once, and then every monitor in the store went black. The lights dimmed, not going out completely, but reducing to a sickly yellow glow that barely pushed back the darkness. I heard the walk-in cooler door open, not on the monitors, in the store itself, behind me. The heavy metal door that I'd walked through hundreds of times to restock inventory was opening, and I could hear the same sounds I'd heard on the phone. Breathing, screaming, the sound of many things moving in the dark. I turned slowly, every instinct telling me to run, but my legs refusing to obey. The cooler door stood open, and beyond it was the same impossible darkness I'd seen on the monitors. But now I was in the same room with it, separated by maybe 50 feet and a counter. The hands emerged first, pressing against the doorframe, pulling at the edges of reality like they were trying to widen the opening. The pale fingers left smears on the metal that looked like condensation, but smelled like rot. The faces followed, pushing through, their features becoming clearer and more terrible as they entered our world. Then I heard Vernon's voice, urgent and commanding. "Close your eyes. Close them now." I slammed my eyes shut just as something in the cooler made a sound. Not a sound that traveled through air, but a sound that resonated in my bones, in my teeth, in the meat of my brain. It was invitation and command and hunger all at once. And even with my eyes closed, I could feel it examining me, assessing whether I was strong enough to join it or weak enough to be consumed. Rule 7, Vernon's voice said, "Closer now. Say it out loud. If you hear scratching from the walk-in cooler," I stammered, "it's just the compressor." Again, me at this time. "It's just the compressor," I said, putting every ounce of conviction I could muster into the words. "It's just the compressor. It's just the compressor." The sound of my bones faded. The smell of rot dissipated. When I finally opened my eyes, the cooler door was closed, the lights were back to normal, and Vernon stood beside me behind the counter, his face drawn and pale. "You answer the phone," he said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. "I did. And you look at the monitors during the blackout period." "Yes." Vernon sighed, suddenly looking much older than his 50-some years. "I was afraid this would happen eventually. 3 years is about when people start thinking they understand this place, start thinking the rules are arbitrary. But you survived, which means you're stronger than most. Or luckier. Probably both." "What did I see?" I asked. "What is that place?" "That place," Vernon said carefully, "is everywhere and nowhere. It's not a physical location. It's a state of being, a realm that exists alongside ours. Most people never see it, never know it's there. But here at the crossroads, the barrier between that place and ours is thin. The rules aren't just safety guidelines, Daniel. They're reinforcement. They're how we maintain the boundary." The voice on the phone said we're protecting them from escaping. Vernon nodded. "That's one way to think about it. The things in that darkness aren't evil, exactly. They're just other. They operate on different rules, want different things. If they fully crossed over, if they established a permanent foothold in our reality, it would change everything. Not destroy it, change it. And humans aren't meant to live in a changed world. Why here?" I asked. "Why is the crossroads the thin spot?" "Some places are just like that. Usually places where many paths intersect, where many people have passed through. All that movement, all that transition, wears reality thin. It's always been this way, long before there were trucks or highways. The Native Americans knew, the settlers knew, and now we know." Vernon moved to the coffee maker and poured 2 cups, handing one to me. My father's deal wasn't with something evil. It was with the guardians, the ones who keep the boundaries stable. The woman in red, the runner, even the voices on the CB radio. They're all part of the defense system, warning people, testing people, making sure that those who come here are either strong enough to maintain the rules or scared enough to avoid this place entirely. And the dead shift workers, I asked, we're part of the defense too, in a way, by being here, by following the rules, by maintaining normalcy, even when everything feels wrong. You're anchoring this reality. You're proving that normal human life can continue here, that the darkness doesn't have to win. I sip my coffee, processing this information. What happens if we stop? If everyone quits and no one works the dead shift? Vernon's expression darkened. We tried that once, back in '92. Shut down for 2 weeks for renovations. During those 2 weeks, 7 people disappeared on this stretch of highway. Just vanished from their vehicles. We found the cars abandoned, engines still running, doors open. The people were never found. When we reopened and resumed the dead shift, the disappearances stopped. So we can't leave. We can't leave, Vernon confirmed. Not permanently. Not without consequences. The rest of that shift passed quietly, almost as if the crossroads was satisfied with what had happened. By 6 a.m., when the first light of dawn began to color the eastern sky, everything felt normal again. The coffee pot was full. The aisles were tidy. The cooler door remained closed and ordinary. But I was changed. I understood now what I was part of, and that understanding was both reassuring and terrifying. The rules weren't arbitrary. They were necessary. Every night I followed them. I was helping to maintain a barrier between the world I knew and something vast and incomprehensible. Over the following weeks, I noticed other things I'd missed before. The pattern in which customers arrived, always in groups of prime numbers. The way certain products never needed restocking, as if they replenished themselves. The fact that my watch always showed the correct time when I left at 6 a.m., no matter what impossible things had happened during the shift or how distorted time had felt. I also learned new rules through experimentation and observation. If your reflection in the bathroom mirror blinks before you do, leave the bathroom immediately. The newspaper rack sometimes contains tomorrow's papers. Don't read them. If a customer pays with coins that are too cold to touch comfortably, accept them anyway, but don't put them in the register until they've warmed to room temperature. Sometimes you'll hear conversations in the parking lot when no one is visible. These aren't meant for you. Ignore them. And the most important rule I learned, the crossroads chooses its workers. People who end up on the dead shift aren't here by accident. We're selected somehow, drawn to this place because we have the right combination of resilience and sensitivity. We can perceive what's happening without breaking under the weight of it. Rita confirmed this theory one morning during shift change. I applied for a day shift position, she told me. Vernon hired me for nights without explanation. When I asked why, he just said I was suited for it. It took me 6 months to understand what he meant. What did he mean? People like us, we've already seen cracks in reality. Maybe not as obvious as what happens here, but enough to know that the world isn't as solid as everyone pretends. We're not rigid enough to shatter when confronted with the impossible. We bend. We adapt. We survive. She was right. When I thought back to my life before the crossroads, I realized I'd always been sensitive to wrongness. The house I grew up in had a cold spot in a hallway that never made sense. In college, I'd had a roommate whose shadow sometimes moved independently. I'd seen things in my peripheral vision that vanished when I looked directly at them. Most people would dismiss these experiences as imagination or tricks of the light. But I'd always known, on some level, that they were real. The crossroads hadn't changed me. It had revealed what I already was. It's been 3 years and 4 months since I started working at the Crossroads truck stop, and tonight feels different. The air has that same charged quality it had the night I broke the rules, but this time I haven't done anything to provoke it. The coffee is disappearing faster than usual, and it's only 2:15 a.m. That means something significant is coming. I've learned to trust my instincts in this place. When a wrongness feels purposeful rather than random, When the strangeness seems to have direction, it's usually because the crossroads itself is trying to communicate something. Tonight feels like one of those nights. The first customer arrives at 2:23 a.m. I recognize him immediately as a veteran trucker. His movements are practiced and efficient as he heads straight for the coffee station. But there's something else about him, something that makes me pay closer attention. His shadow is slightly out of sync with his movements, lagging behind by a fraction of a second. He approaches the counter with his coffee, and when he looks at me, I see recognition in his eyes. Not recognition of me personally, but recognition of what I am. He knows I'm a dead shift worker. He knows what that means. "You should call Vernon," he says without preamble. "Tell him the cycle is completing." "What cycle?" I ask, my hand already reaching for the phone. The one that started with his father. 28 years ago tonight, the deal was made. These things always have a term, and the term is ending. He places exact change on the counter, his fingers leaving frost patterns on the coins. What comes next depends on choices made in the next few hours. Vernon will know what to do. He walks out before I can ask anything else, his shadow finally catching up with him as he crosses the threshold into the parking lot. I watch through the windows as he climbs into a semi-truck that wasn't there a moment ago. The truck pulls away, and in the red glow of its taillights, I see the trailer is empty, but something inside is moving, pressing against the walls like it wants to get out. I call Vernon. He answers on the first ring, like he's been waiting. "It's time," he says before I can speak. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't let anyone into aisle 3, no matter what they ask for." The line goes dead. I stand there holding the phone, my heart racing. In 3 years, Vernon has never come to the store during the dead shift. Whatever is happening tonight is unprecedented. The next hour passes in a strange haze. Customers come and go, but they're different from the usual mix of truckers and insomniacs. These people move with purpose, their eyes alert and knowing. None of them speak to me beyond the necessities of their transactions, but I can feel them assessing me, measuring something I don't understand. At 3:15 a.m., the woman in the red dress walks through the door. I've never seen her before, despite working hundreds of shifts. She's exactly as Rita described. Vintage dress from the 1950s, hair perfectly styled, makeup immaculate. She stands just inside the entrance, utterly still, her dark eyes fixed on me. I remember Rule 1. Never acknowledge her until she speaks first. But tonight, with the cycle completing and Vernon on his way, I wonder if the old rules still apply. I wait, forcing myself to breathe normally, to continue my tasks as if nothing unusual is happening. Finally, she speaks. "Daniel Reed," she says, her voice clear and melodious. "You have been faithful to your duties. The question now is whether you understand what those duties truly are." I understand. I say carefully. I maintain the boundary. I keep the darkness contained. She smiles, and it's not the terrible smile Rita described. It's sad, almost compassionate. That is part of it. But the greater truth is this. Places like the crossroads exist because humanity needs them. Your species generates so much fear, so much darkness, so much of what you call evil. It has to go somewhere. It has to be contained somewhere. We are the containers. The thin places, the haunted spaces, the locations that make people uneasy. We absorb what your world produces, and we keep it from poisoning everything. But the things I've seen, I say, the hands, the faces, the darkness, and the cooler, are manifestations of what humans have created. She interrupts. Every murder, every cruelty, every moment of despair generates energy. That energy accumulates. Here at the crossroads, we process it. We contain it. The rules you follow aren't just for your protection. They're the ritual that transforms that darkness into something that can be held, managed, survived. Vernon's truck pulls into the parking lot. Through the windows, I watch him climb out, moving slowly like a man heading to his own execution. He pauses at the entrance, exchanges a long look with the woman in red, then enters. "Daniel," he says, "thank you for calling me." "What's happening, Vernon?" He moves behind the counter, his familiar presence somehow both comforting and ominous. 28 years ago, my father made a deal. The crossroads was failing, reality was tearing, and something had to be done. He offered himself as an anchor, a permanent connection between our world and the other place. For 28 years, that's kept the barrier stable. But the term is ending. What happens when it ends? Someone has to renew the deal, the woman in red says. A new anchor must be chosen, someone who understands both worlds, who has survived the dead shift long enough to be worthy. I feel the weight of their expectation settle on me. "You want me to take Vernon's father's place?" "Not his place," Vernon corrects. "The deal evolves with each generation. My father was the anchor. I've been the keeper, maintaining the rules and ensuring the staff survive their education. The next phase requires someone who can do both, anchor and keep, witness and guardian. And if I refuse?" The woman in red's expression doesn't change, but the temperature in the store drops noticeably. Then the crossroads collapses. The darkness we've contained for decades will be released all at once. It will spread along the highways, seeping into truck stops and rest areas across the country. Within a year, there will be dozens of thin places instead of one, and none of them will be managed. The contamination will accelerate. "But if I accept, you'll never leave," Vernon says quietly. "Not really. Even on your days off, even when you're miles away, you'll be connected to this place. You'll feel it. You'll hear it. The crossroads will become part of you, and you'll become part of it. But you'll also have power here, the ability to set rules, to control how the boundary functions. You'll be more than an employee. You'll be a guardian." I look around the store, the familiar aisles, the humming refrigeration units, the parking lot visible through the windows. This place has been my life for over 3 years. I've survived things here that would have broken most people. I've learned to navigate impossibility. And despite everything, despite the fear and the strangeness, I've found purpose here. "What do I have to do?" I ask. The woman in red extends her hand. "Come with me to aisle 3. The transition happens there, where the barrier is thinnest." Vernon grips my shoulder briefly. "You don't have to do this. I could try to find someone else, though time is running out. But I know there isn't anyone else. The crossroads chose me 3 years ago when I walked through these doors looking for a job. Every night I've survived, every rule I've learned, every encounter with the impossible has been preparing me for this moment." I follow the woman in red to aisle 3. The fluorescent lights above us are steady and bright, but I can feel the darkness pressing against reality here, like a membrane stretched too thin. She stops in the center of the aisle, where I once found every item turned backward. "The ritual is simple," she says. "You must willingly accept the role. You must speak your name and your purpose. And you must stay here, in this aisle, from now until dawn. Whatever you see, whatever you hear, you must not leave. By remaining, you prove your commitment. By surviving, you prove your strength." She steps back, and suddenly I'm alone in the aisle. Vernon has retreated to the counter. The woman in red has vanished as silently as she arrived. The clock on the wall shows 3:47 a.m. I have 2 hours and 13 minutes until dawn. "My name is Daniel Reed." I say aloud, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I accept the role of guardian. I will maintain the boundary. I will contain the darkness. I will be the anchor." The lights in aisle 3 flicker once, twice, then go out completely. But this time I don't leave. This time, I stand my ground as the darkness rushes in. What I see in that darkness, I can't fully describe. It's not just visual, it's tactile, auditory, emotional. I experience the accumulated weight of everything the crossroads has contained over decades. I feel every moment of fear, every whisper of despair, every shadow of violence that has been absorbed and processed here. It pours through me like water through a sieve, testing my capacity, measuring my limits. I see the faces again, hundreds of them, but now I understand they're not threats. They're echoes of victims, people who died in fear or pain on these highways over the years. The crossroads has been holding them, keeping them from dissolving completely into the void. They press close to me, recognizing that I'm becoming something new, something that can help them. I see the hands reaching from the darkness, and I realize they're not trying to escape. They're holding the darkness back, containing it from inside. They're part of the defense system, volunteers who gave themselves to this purpose long ago. I see the huge, ancient thing that exists in dimensions I can't fully perceive, and I understand it's not a monster. It's the crossroads itself, the living embodiment of this thin place. And it's been waiting for someone to properly recognize it, to form a conscious partnership rather than just following rules blindly. The darkness recedes gradually as my acceptance deepens. By 4:15 a.m., the lights flicker back on. I'm still standing in the center of aisle 3, but I'm changed. I can feel the crossroads now, feel its boundaries and weak points, feel the constant pressure of what it contains. I'm the anchor. I'm the keeper. I am the guardian. Vernon is waiting at the counter when I emerge. He looks older, more tired, but also relieved. "It's done," he says. "I can feel it. The transition is complete." "What happens to you now?" I ask. "I'm free," he says simply. "I'll stay on to help you learn the deeper aspects of your role, but the burden has passed. My family's obligation is fulfilled." He smiles, and it's the first genuine smile I've seen from him. "Thank you, Daniel. You've given me my life back." The rest of the shift passes normally, or what passes for normal at the crossroads. Customers come and go. Coffee brews. Shelves get restocked. But I'm aware of layers now that I couldn't perceive before. I can sense when someone enters who has darkness clinging to them, and I can feel the crossroads gently drawing that darkness away, processing it, containing it. I understand the constant work this place is doing, the vital service it provides by being a container for humanity's waste products of fear and pain. At 6 a.m., dawn breaks over the Iowa cornfields. I clock out, but for the first time, I don't feel that sense of relief and disconnection. The crossroads is with me now, a constant presence in the back of my mind. When I drive home, I feel its pull like an invisible thread connecting me to that strange, necessary place. Over the following weeks, I settle into my new role. I work the dead shift as always, but now I can adjust the rules, refine them based on deeper understanding. I can communicate with the guardians, the woman in red, the runner, the voices on the CB radio. They're my colleagues now, part of the same system. I hire new employees carefully, sensing which ones can handle the work and which ones would break. Rita stays on, relieved to have someone who understands what she's endured. We develop new protocols together, new ways of managing the strange occurrences that make them less traumatic for the staff. The truck drivers continue to come, continue to have their strange experiences. But now I can sometimes ease their passage, make the encounters less frightening when possible. The crossroads still needs to be strange. That's its function, but it doesn't need to be cruel. I've learned that there are other places like this across the country, other thin places with their own guardians. We're part of a network, though most of us never meet in person. We communicate through dreams and synchronicities, sharing knowledge and warnings. The work we do is invisible to most of humanity, but it's essential. Without us, without places like the crossroads, the accumulated darkness would poison everything. Sometimes, late in the dead shift, I stand in the parking lot and look at the highway stretching into darkness. I think about all the travelers who pass this way, unaware of what this place really is, unaware of what's being done to keep their world safe. I think about the choice I made and whether I regret it. I don't. This is where I belong. This is my purpose. The crossroads chose me, and I chose it in return. Every night, I maintain the boundary. Every night, I contain the darkness. Every night, I prove that human beings can stand at the edge of the impossible and not just survive, but serve. The dead shift continues. The coffee stays fresh. The rules are followed. And in a forgotten truck stop in the heart of Iowa, one man stands watch over mysteries that most people will never know exist. If you've ever driven through Iowa in the darkest hours of night, if you've ever stopped a lonely truck stop and felt something watching you from the shadows, if you've ever heard strange sounds or seen impossible things at the edge of your perception, you've been close to a place like the crossroads. You've felt the presence of the thin places, the containers that absorb your fears so you don't have to carry them. Be grateful for those places. Be grateful for the guardians who staff them. And if you ever find yourself working a dead shift in a location that feels wrong, if you're given a list of strange rules to follow, remember, those rules exist for a reason. Follow them. Trust them. They might save your life, or they might change it forever. The Crossroads truck stop remains open 24/7 at the junction of Highway 20 and County Road 47. The dead shift runs from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. every single night. And if you ask the locals about it, they'll tell you the place is strange, that weird things happen there, that you should avoid it if possible. But the truckers know different. They know that some stops are necessary, even when they're uncomfortable. They know that certain places serve purposes beyond the obvious. And they know that on the Iowa highways, when the night is darkest and the road seems endless, the lights of the Crossroads truck stop are always there, a beacon in the darkness. Not because it's safe, but because someone is standing watch. Someone is maintaining the boundary. Someone is keeping the darkness contained. That someone is me. My name is Daniel Reed, and I work the dead shift with the dead in Iowa. The rules are bizarre because they have to be. The job is impossible because it must be. And every night, when the world goes to sleep and the unseen forces stir in the shadows, I'm here, making sure they stay unseen, making sure dawn always comes, making sure the crossroads endures. Come visit if you dare, but remember the rules. Follow them exactly. And whatever you do, don't answer the phone when it rings at 3:33 a.m. Unless, of course, you're ready to learn what really lurks in the darkness. Unless you're ready to become a guardian yourself. The Crossroads is always hiring. The end.